Hello, everybody. Terrence, Popp here with another episode of Life in the Lair. And today I'm going to be covering, I guess you could say it's a Paranormal Popp episode. I'm going to be covering some stories in regards to an aircraft boneyard that a lot of aircraft were stored after World War II. This is a group of stories that was sent to me by an individual who watches the show. And these are stories from his grandfather, who has been passed away for a good 30 years. Okay, so you have to forgive me if there's any weirdness here, because the grandfather told it to his father or his son, and while the stories were told, his son heard the stories from the grandfather. Okay, so, you know, it's already twice removed from the actual source where these came from. But I've been around, and I've talked to many servicemen in my time, you know, in all branches, including some in other countries when I was in Iraq and during my travels. And it is not out of the question for service members to experience haunting and supernatural phenomena. It's quite common, actually. Greet your coworkers, and you must be polite. But don't you dare make this critical mistake. Be overly social with them. The more likable you are, the more they're going to want to be up your ass. You don't need that. It's kind of like the pep talk Brad Pitt gives Matt Damon in Ocean's 11. Don't use 7 words when 4 will do. Don't shift your weight, because then you look nervous and people want to approach and comfort you. Look always at your mark, but never stare directly at them. Be specific, but not memorable. Be funny, but don't make them laugh. You want them to like you and then forget you as soon as you leave. You want to be their coworker or associate, but never their friend. This keeps people at a comfortable distance so you can maneuver and do your job. And this will go a long way to suppress the curiosity of others. If you make the mistake of being overly social, at some point you're going to have a target on your back.
Redonkulas.com Productions presents The Working Man's Survival Guide in the Woke Era. 97 hilarious minutes of job security and risk management designed to help men keep their jobs and their heads in the insane world of office politics. Available on July 4th for $100. Paid supporters on GiveSendBro, Locals, and Subscribestar will save $20. Mark your calendars and go to work.
Now, this takes place at it's basically Cal Aero Field out of California. After World War II, once they signed, you know, the peace treaties or what have you, all of the surplus aircraft were condensed, and I think it was 40 different boneyards across the country. If you look at the numbers, I believe the United States manufactured somewhere between 300 and 320,000 different aircraft for World War II. 7% of those aircraft were damaged in training, lost in crashes, you know, or accidents, you know, what have you. Another 40 some odd thousand of those planes were, you know, lost in action, lost in transit, and what have you. Now, that's just what I read in regards to this, because I was trying to, you know, build up the story so you just know exactly what's going on. All right, now, World War II was an absolute nightmare for the Army Air Corps, or the early Air Force. During the bombing campaigns just over Europe, 30 some odd thousand airmen were lost. You know, And it got to the point where you really only had to do, I believe, either 15 or 25 missions, depending upon where you were. And if you were a draftee, you're done and you got to go home. The way it was just a meat grinder, very few people made it to the end because without getting tore up. It's incredibly brutal. And then you had the whole D-Day thing. The C-47s dropped all kinds of paratroopers. And it was fairly common, especially if it was a contested airfield, for men to be killed from ground fire through the skin of the aircraft. I myself jumped into Panama, and we had tracer fire come through the side of the aircraft and bounce around in there. So it's a real thing. All right, so this takes place. The guy's name was Franco Domenico from Syracuse, New York. He was drafted into the service basically towards the beginning of the Korean War. For whatever reason, this particular individual wound up becoming an SP, and he was actually assigned to this boneyard to guard the perimeter because they were tearing apart the aircraft in there. They had a smelter. They're doing the whole parts thing. It's very similar to the Army's DRMO yards, where the old equipment comes in and then it's sold out piece by piece or by lots to other companies or other people who want it. Now, the way it was explained to me, Airman Domenico basically was in the service for just over 2 years, and he was discharged right after the end of the Korean War in 1953. So basically for 18 months or so, he worked the perimeter. And he was like, I believe it's an airman, like E2 or E3. I mean, that's basically you show up, that's the rank they give you, and you're just a guy who, you get your, rules of engagement and your orders from your NCOs, and you just execute. And they drove around the perimeter from time to time, but more than likely he would get assigned to one of the gates, and each gate had a little guard shack because if it's cold, inclement weather, what have you. And for the most part, other than an occasional kids coming under the fence and screwing around, which, it happens. Just ask anyone who owns a junkyard. Kids like to do that. When I was a child, I loved to do it myself. I would have loved to jump the fence and then play around on these aircraft. Well, during that 18 months, Airman Domenico reported some strange phenomena. And he wasn't the only one who saw this. Now, the way it was explained, from time to time, he would catch the smell of cigarettes, especially at what guard tower was that, or what gate was that? At gate 4. He would hear murmurings, and he would smell cigarette smoke coming from inside of the airfield, especially if the winds shifted. And he would patrol the area and didn't really see anything most of the time. Every now and again, he would hear murmuring, but he couldn't really understand what was going on. And he would report it to his NCO, and it would go up the chain, and it was basically just, hey, it is what it is. It's haunted. And once they told him that the boneyard was haunted, he started to really pay attention. At gate 4, there was a bunch of B-25s and C-47s. B-25 was, a bomber. I think it was a medium bomber, basically for medium to low altitude action. And the C-47 was the workhorse it was basically the Air Corps workhorse for transporting supplies, men, and paratroopers. And a lot of the aircraft in the boneyard at that time actually were in the D-Day invasion. I have actually watched a lot of the documentaries in regards to, when those C-47s returned back to England. Lots of guys were dead in those things. I mean, just before they even got out of the aircraft, they had a flak shell come through the side, get 5 or 6 dudes. You have to hose the thing out. You have the 20 mics ripping through the side of the aircraft. Because let's face it, the side of an aircraft, especially in World War II, it doesn't have any armor value. It's a suggestion. It's like real thick aluminum foil. Bullets just whip through that like nothing. So, I mean, that sets the stage. Now, in regards to Gate 4, on several occasions, and this was reported by Domenico and several of his other compatriots who worked with him, that they would literally hear a voice when they're walking their beat. It happened the day and night. And the words were, "Do you have a light?"
Yeah.
Like 3 or 4 guys in his shift all had the same story. So something was going on there. And what's the other one? I mean, when I heard that one, I was, it is what it is. Somebody's wandering around there, and back then everyone smoked. So I mean, it breaks my heart that a paratrooper's still walking around his aircraft. Maybe he didn't know he was dead. I don't know. Hopefully he found some peace, because I think virtually all of those have been, scrapped or melted down. I believe there's 20 or 30 still in existence that are flying to this day, but usually they're in air shows. One night, he shows up at Gate 4 and relieves the guy in front of him. And the guy who was supposed to be in there with, basically was sick, or he was there basically by himself, which it happens. It's not ideal, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. Now, on this particular night, he's sitting in the guard shack at at Gate 4. And the way it was explained, you're sitting, looking out the window. There's the gate, and there's the approaching road. And they only really open the gate when they're bringing airframes out, or taking out parts or what have you. And there's a window off to the side. So when they come through the gate, you have the main window here. You look through the side, and you can see whatever is passing by. He's sitting there looking, droning, because that's what happens when you're pulling guard. And he sees an individual literally walk by the window to his side. And there was a little bit of a shadow going on because there was a street light. So he and for just a quick instant, he saw an individual wearing old, khakis. He gets up, walks out the back door, goes around, sees nothing. All right, so he's on high alert, decides he's going to start walking around the area to see if there's somebody, fucking around with him. Didn't really see much. And about 30 minutes later, it's starting to get late, sometime after 11 o'clock at night. He's walking back down the road because he's allowed to go within 200 meters of the gate to see what's going on. And as he's going down the rows of the C-47s, he hears somebody in boots running at full speed directly at him, to the point where he literally put his hands up because he was expecting to get tackled, because, that's how real it was to him. Nothing happened.
Spooky.
All right, now when he got his composure, he took his flashlight out, he's looking around, and literally he sees boot prints in the dirt. They're on the ground, literally right up to where he was standing, and he turns around, and they're behind him. He follows them for about 20, 30 meters, and they just stop. So he decided he was good. He went back to the gate room for the rest of his shift, and they had like a 90-day rotation where you get like the day shift, the afternoon shift, and the night shift, and he was working the night shift. So basically, he came on station, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and he worked until basically after dawn. That was his life. Okay, listen, it is what it is. When you're a draftee, don't expect to get all kinds of crazy assignments. They just put you where they need you. All right, now at Gate 1, and this was seen by his NCOIC and the OIC, and it had been seen many times. Literally, there would be individuals would come walking up to the gate, broad daylight, middle of the night, it didn't matter. It was always the same 3 guys dressed in Army Air Corps uniforms. And it happened on a fairly regular basis where there were dozens of men who literally saw it. And it's rumored, Mr. Domenico basically, told his son and grandson that one of the civilian employees that was stripping down an aircraft had basically a 20-minute conversation with one of these entities. Looked just like a real person. The guy, they're talking, going back and forth, blah, blah, blah. He got a cigarette from the guy, the whole deal. He gets done. The guy walks off, goes around, around the tail of the aircraft. And the civilian employee gets up. He's doing his stuff. He's carrying I guess it was a part to a Jeep or something. And, he's like maybe 30 seconds behind this dude that he'd just been jaw-jacking with for like 20 minutes. And nowhere to be seen. Gone. Civilian employee sees the guy's footprints, where they were talking for 20 minutes, follows them around the edge of the tail of the aircraft, and they just stop. It's like whatever that was just flew up into the air. Not a trace. All right. So what I'm trying to say is this. War is probably really good at making ghosts, and World War II was a meat grinder. And some of those individuals were still stuck in and around their military equipment. Because believe it or not, World War II and any pilots out there, you become very attached to the airframes that you fly. And perhaps that attachment continued in death. Or they didn't know they were dead. They were, it just is what it is. Think about it. A shell travels probably anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 feet per second. They have explosives in them. One of those goes off near you, you're probably not even going to feel it. And from hearing these stories, I'm going to have to put that up as a hypothesis of what's going on here.
Interesting hypothesis.
All right, what's the other one here? Oh, yeah. Again, this is at Gate 4. And this wasn't seen by, what's his name? Domenico. This was seen by another individual, and this is a secondhand story that was told to him. That when they delivered a batch of C-47s, and one they were in place because they put them in nice, neat rows, they would see paratroopers walking guard around the airframes. Most of the time it was at night. Okay, it probably happened in the day as well, because let's face it, ghosts just don't operate at night. They're 24/7, 365. So, and some of the stories I've heard about the C-47s is while they were preparing for D-Day, they had a lot of paratroopers walking guard around the airframes while they were parked, because the Army's really good at doing guard duty. I mean, and the paratroopers were moved into position, and they were not far off from the airfield, so it's not that much of a stretch to, basically say, hey, we need some guards, go put together a detail, you, and you, boom, this is what you're doing. Here's your general orders. This is where you're supposed to be. Make it happen. And a lot of those paratroopers didn't make it back physically from World War II. And again, it's not much of a stretch that they're doing something they did in life. They were guarding those airframes. I hope you enjoyed the paranormal stuff, because it's one of my passions. I love telling the ghost stories. People send them to me. It is what it is. And listen, I hope I didn't butcher your grandfather's story. I read your stuff quite a few times, and then I handwrite it myself 2 or 3 times. So it becomes like a second nature kind of thing. So hopefully I did him justice. I really do. And may he rest in peace. Okay. It is what it is. But I'm telling you, it's not that much of a stretch.